The Middle East. Iraq, August 1990. Saddam Hussein's armed forces march into Kuwait, a small desert kingdom situated on the northern shores of the Persian Gulf. He claims Kuwait is stealing Iraqi oil. In January of the following year, an international armed response was mustered from 35 countries. The Gulf War would wage for 43 days as coalition forces first fought an air war and then chased the Iraqi army back to Baghdad. 60 Royal Air Force Tornado jets were dispatched. After 6 were lost in combat and 5 aircrew killed, a switch to medium-level bombing was proposed. Something had to change. Needing a swift solution, an ageing British jet was rushed into theatre. More accustomed to low-level anti-ship attacks, the Buccaneer would provide laser designation for smart weapons fired by tornado jets, inflicting extensive damage on Iraqi infrastructure and airfields. Accounts from politicians and generals were told long ago, but what of those who were there? The people who are never normally heard from. Now, after troves of previously secret documents were published, their story, and that of the aircraft they served, can be told in greater detail than ever before. Sunset over Immeasurable Airport, Bahrain, February 1991.
You see, the Buccaneer had a different thing. Unlike everyone else, the war started preparation something like a year before they actually started the war. Right? So, for everyone else, there was this huge, long, slow build-up. What happened in the case of the Buccaneers and myself was that we had a war warning. We were told we might go out, and we were on standby all the way through to the Christmas before the war started, which is fine. Then we were told definitely it ain't happening.
We were at Scotland Barbecue in the August 90. The sort of threats were there of invasion and all. And our wing commander thought, well, the CEO says, no, they won't send the Buccaneers out there, they're that old. But they did, because the tornadoes couldn't do the job.
We weren't sat there thinking, certainly from the ground crew point of view, that there was ever any chance that the Buccaneer was going to get involved at all. I believe some of the air crew were already looking at how they would take out bridges, for example, and use bridges up the top of Scotland to practice on. Now, when that started, I don't know, but certainly. So we deployed down to St Morgan, 12 Scotland deployed to Gib, and we were just there doing our daily business on deployment, watching what was going on in the news, thinking, well, there's no requirement for us, they've got the tornado.
I can't remember. It was a senior officer actually came down to St Morgan to visit us from 18 Group, and I remember some of the guys were asking, when are the Buccaneers going out? And he said there's currently no plans for the Buccaneers to deploy to the Gulf, because we could see what was going on out there. The tornadoes were doing low-level missions and were obviously having some casualties, and with the Buccaneer laser designation capability, some of the guys wondered if we could help, particularly if they were going to have to shift up to medium level, and there was no precision guidance capability for the tornado at the time. It was in development, but it hadn't. It was not near the front line at that time.
So net result was they suddenly said, we want the Bucks over there. So for us, it was an instantaneous thing. We were definitely not going. The war started. We were definitely not going. Then about a fortnight in, 3 weeks in, they said, we need you out there yesterday. So it was, we didn't start preparing, which is why we didn't have any camouflage kit except the stupid stuff. They didn't start until I think it was a Wednesday, it came out that the Bucks were going to go. Well, actually, most of the Bucks weren't even at Lossy at the time. Then we started prepping. By Friday, I was in the Herc going out, and the squadron aircraft had just taken off. The first of the squadron aircraft had taken off. The rest caught up with us, and in the end, everyone went out there.
And and I'm not sure at what point the decision was made that people would go, but I think the first aircraft went on the Saturday of that week, because I flew out on the Sunday, it was a case of really getting prepared very quickly.
We were sent out there because tornadoes couldn't do the job they were asked to do with their laser designating pod. The Buccaneer had a capability with a Pave Spike pod to be able to do that, and did really, really well. And I believe General Schwarzkopf said that it was the Buccaneer that saved the Air Force's reputation. We never lost a sortie. Unlike Tornado, we didn't have to generate 6 or 7 aircraft to launch one.
And then, fortnight into the start of the war, they said, oh my crikeys, what we need is a weapon that the Buccaneer is capable of using, and none of them others are, which was the Paveway bombing system.
One of the major issues was that if we were going to switch to medium level pave spiking, we'd never really done that before. All our pave spiking was done at low level. We're talking at 100 to 250 feet, and so target acquisition was very sort of short range, and you didn't have a lot of time to do things. Whereas for medium level, it was a different kettle of fish. You would have longer to acquire the target, but equally you're exposed to hostile fire for longer. So we did at least, myself and my pilot, we did at least one training sortie overhead Lossiemouth, just practicing pave spiking from sort of 15, 20,000 feet, which is where we were likely to operate in the Gulf.
One day we got told, right, you need to get yourself sorted out, you need to get your bags packed. Air Command wants all their assets in one place, so they want all the Bucks to return to Lossiemouth. Before, we can sort of see the logic in that. They said, right, they're sending a bus to pick you up. Within an hour, it had changed to they're sending a VC-10 to pick you up. When they're putting a plane on, here we go. So we got on the VC-10, still a little bit confused and sort of being told, well, we don't think the Bucks are going to go. They just wanted everyone there in one place.
We were told when we first went out there, be prepared to be here for 6 months. But as it happened, it was 6 weeks or whatever it was. I remember that. I got told be prepared for 6 months. That was quite a hard thing for me to do, tell my family I was going to war, because my kids, what were they, 9 and 12 at the time. And then weeks later, when we come back, we got presented with a medal.
The idea was we went out with the Bucks only as an afterthought. I think that's a fair description. They were posted out way after the start of the war, and we, as doing NDT, went out with them. It was a strange situation because literally we didn't know it was happening until about 4 days before we arrived out there. No prepping, no nothing. The first thing we knew was the aircraft were told the Bucks are going. They were being dragged back from all over the world, and we had to get our kit ready to go on the first Herc that was going out there.
So we got there, landed on the coach, and there was a supply officer who came up to the front of the bus and said in words similar to, "You're going to be going to war. This is secret, and you're not allowed to tell any of your families." Okay, and we all looked at each other and thought, yeah, come on, how do you explain to your families and that you've returned halfway through a deployment and they put an aircraft to bring you back with what's going on? They're not silly. So I'd imagine every person sort of said to their families, when they got home, that was a risk. And that started then an intense period of training. That started an intense period for the station, getting the aircraft ready, loads of injections, made sure you zeroed your rifle up until the day that we deployed, really. And, up until we had one brief, even up till then, I think there was a certain amount of, I don't really think we're going to go here.
We went flying out there in a hell of a hurry. And it was funny, really, because there was a message came out shortly after we landed. That's it. There will be no more transfers of personnel between the area and the UK until after the war was over. So we knew we were sort of shut in.
I suppose the worst thing was when you got called in and got told to make your will. Because at that day, 20, 30-year-olds don't really think about making wills. Why would you? And then to actually sit down and say, this is what I want to happen, that again sort of brings it home a little bit.
And we were told, there's a Herc landing, get on it. We worked out for us on NDT, we started to assemble the stuff, and then because I was going to run it, I had to go home, tell the wife that I'm now going to walk, good night, see you tomorrow, or not. And the leap back to get on this Herc. Oh, and they said, you've got to be armed. So, of course, off we went to get a gun. I mean, I hadn't fired a gun in years. And we were invited to go and get these here guns and all the rest of it, and the webbing. Now, since I had worn webbing, it had all changed.
So the air war kicked off in 7th of January when we were in Cornwall at St Morgan. And suddenly we're flown back and we're going, And they gave us, I don't know how many injections all at once. I felt like a pincushion. But anyway, the day that we went out, well, that's the thing, my boss realised it's my birthday when we were away. I was going to be 40. He says, right, you can go out in the last Hercules. So that was the Monday. And Will pounded the car. We got in the car, turned the key to ignition. When you believe the key snapped off. I looked up. He tried to tell me something. So I gave the wife the key and then drove to camp. And then I had to report to the armory first thing. And I got a Sterling submachine gun. I remember giving it to my son to hold. And then we actually flew to Bahrain and we got there, I think it was early hours in the morning, I can't remember what time. And the first thing I said, right, we can give us the weapons. There's loads of guards here, you don't need the weapons. That was it.
Although saying that, when we got told we were flying out to the Gulf, they weren't able to give us the flights when we were flying. I was actually having an Indian in Elgin, and it came on the news. RAF will be deploying on Sunday. Oh, that's nice to know, isn't it?
I think the other thing was saying goodbye to friends and family, because we had very little time to do that. So my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, she came up to Lossiemouth from Edinburgh, I think on the Friday night, and we had sort of about 24 hours together or so, but I was back on the station flying a training sortie on the Saturday, and again going out and getting injections and that kind of thing, and then disappeared off to the Gulf first thing on the very early on the Sunday morning.
Over 3 decades ago, Bahrain looked very different to what it is now.
We got out. I was the first one to go out for the NDT, and when we got out there, or I went out there, I got in the Herc, and we were told, I'm now in charge of a pile of young lads. There wasn't one of them over 19, 20, really young lads, and they were going to war for the first time. They looked at me being a decent bit older. I think they thought I'd been through war. But we were both going out for the same reason. The Herc we went on had a fuel leak when we took off from Lossie. We were supposed to be out there and landing on, I think it was Friday, we took off in the middle of the night, and we were supposed to get there for Saturday morning. But in actual fact, what happened was the fuel leak was so bad, we went into Lynham. And we landed at Lynham. Everyone was told that we had to get off. And of course, I was then faced with looking after about 18, 20-year-olds to go and make sure they had accommodation, etc. And that we would be flying out about 5 the following morning. That was interesting because the young lads really were getting worried, and there was me trying to be the cool, calm, collected idiot. We then got back on the aircraft, and I have to say the flight was fantastic because as we went across the deserts, we went and we could look down and see the like Bedouin village, I suppose they were, all spectacular.
Well, we arrived there, went straight into a load of briefings. Straight away, this is where we are, this is what's happening, take care when you're downtown, although there are civilian forces out there that are looking after you should there be any issues, and there never was. And then we went straight into days and nights. I got chosen to do the night shift, so I spent the whole of my war working nights, 12-hour shifts. Next day, early in the morning, nobody could really sleep. We went down and went to the Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I don't believe to a person anyone finished their meal, because there was this, wow, what have we let ourselves in for? What's going to happen? What's the future?
We were staying in the same hotel as the Tornado crews in Bahrain, in the Diplomat. And I knew quite a few of the guys just through having gone through basic navigator training with them. But even so, we sort of sat and chatted to them because they'd obviously had a couple of weeks' experience in theatre.
When we got out there, of course, the Royal Air Force, being what it was, had insisted that we went out in uniform. Well, actually in camouflage, so we went out in DPS colour scheme, ready for the north of Europe, green and brown. So we were all trees. All the Buccaneer people were trees. The rest of the world was in sandy and white and things and disappeared in the desert. And we were a little oasis in the middle of the airfield.
The war in the Gulf presented other challenges beside rapid deployment. For 6 years from 1985, Iraq developed a plethora of chemical and biological weapons. Having already used such weapons against civilian populations, the fear of attacks against the coalition forces was very real.
Initially, when we were here getting prepared to go, we got all these injections, and we got there and we're showing films about the Iraqis hitting the Kurds with nerve agent and things like that. And it's like these tablets, I don't know if you heard of that, NAPS tablets, nerve agent. I read the packet, and it said take them 1 every 8 hours. I thought you can remember to take them out there. And I read it and not tested. That's it, I never tried them. Didn't do that. And I know people that went and got injections or vaccinations for the bubonic plague. Their arms swelled up, and they went back a fortnight later to get the second dose, and they ran out of it. So they went through that first batch with a swollen arm for nothing. I thought I'd just take my chance, to be honest. You've heard of, people getting Gulf War syndrome and all that thing, especially the time I went to the desert and that, but I never really had any effects like that myself.
There was a lot of stuff that we didn't know what was in it for a start, so. But certainly before we went, you got in, all your inoculations. You got all your inoculations in the space of about 5 minutes. It was like bush. And then you sort of sat in a room, and as with most inoculations, there's a chance you might sort of get sort of a little bit of the side effects. And you could see these people that were at the beginning of the queue starting to look a bit unwell. And you think, that's coming my way, that. But it was probably about 7 or 8 injections that we had. And then they said, probably the worst thing that you could ever say to a ground crew person, you can't drink with these. And that sounds like a challenge, doesn't it? But they were right. You can't drink with those. It was horrible. But there was a lot of inoculations in the space of a very short time.
We were supposed to be on these pills that we took once every 12 hours. But as he explained to me, he says, well, you can take them if you want. I'm not going to. So I thought, well, that's very interesting. The doc advises you not to. And what he said was that this stuff is only good for 12 hours. It really is ineffective after that. So why not start the pills when there's a gas or chemical attack? That way you start there and you've got 12 hours before you need to worry about it. And he says, that's what I'm going to do. So net result was, none of us anyway took the pills. So we survived quite nicely without them. No one gassed us or did anything nasty to us, so we all survived.
And most of us, I think, sort of took them for a few days and then we stopped taking them. As you kind of assess the risk, it was like that, yes, Iraq had chemical and biological weapons, but were they likely to use them?
The NAPS tablets really only kicked into this up their own if you didn't put your gas mask on in time. They weren't going to save your life. They didn't make you immune. You still had to be in time masking 9. And if you masked up, you didn't need tablets because you've masked up. So what was the point? And that very soon. And
we had respirators with proper filters on them, not the training ones. And we had in the bag with atropine pens, or give it, if you were hit with it, you could inject yourself. Back here, we've just practiced pretend ones. You can imagine doing it right in the thigh. I suppose the threat was there, but fortunately, we never.
Yeah, no, the medical side of it, there was a lot of uncertainty about what we were being asked to have.
I went out there knowing full well I was going to go out there with the jobs, the side jobs that I had as well, because I was a radiation expert and, well, spurt as in used to, and chemical weapons fairly well, biological not so much, but enough to know, and I would have been part of the people who looked after the Deacon Tam. You get we were worried about it. We didn't know what was coming. We did expect that we were better than he was, so we didn't actually expect us to be facing too much of it. But yeah, I think we were aware that there was a chance of it not coming back. You definitely are.
It was kind of like, when you went into work, you put your flying suit on and you carried all your NBC kit, nuclear, biological, chemical kit. And if the siren went off while you're at work, then you put all your gas mask on and that kind of thing.
We had a lot of time. We had a message come. We were supposedly in this, at Bahrain, we were in this thing, and the gas and chemical warfare alarms went off, and everyone thought, oh my God. So we were busy getting into these strange chemical warfare suits that you have to wear. They're made of carbon and paper and, oh my God. But they are sods because they come vacuum packed together. So you've got to tear these open.
The guys that were out in the August time building up, they built the shelters because we walked into one. I'll say it was only about that sort of high. You had to crawl in. Oh Christ, one guy, it was a night shift, I got told the story. One guy couldn't find his respirator. Panicking. Got told that story, like. I must have, we were there like 6 weeks, but you got into routine.
But on the other hand, you went back on the airfield, you twitched at anything, you knew darn well the immortal case of stay alive, mask in 9. That was the seconds you had to get your full mask and everything else on if there was a drop. And like I say, the places that we had, the bomb shelters that we had, were such that you were basically in a full squatting position whilst trying to dress in that gear.
So as soon as that air raid siren went off, you had to, there was only a few air raid shelters and you had to go, and they were very much what you'd look, if you look at the old World War II type films, they hadn't changed anything. They were sandbags and they were oil drums. And I suppose sitting there with your NBC suit on and your gas mask. We were very got quite adept at being able to put the NBC suit on and, fold it up at the knees so you get it on quicker. Although I did put my trousers on back to front the first sort of time because I was in a blind panic. I didn't know what to expect.
It seems that we had, it was either Czechoslovakian or Hungarian NBC testing kit facility and people, in fact, who were there as our blooming warners if there was any chemical attack, and they had got a registered warning. When our stuff tested, we couldn't find anything. So one said it was, one said it wasn't, so the decision was it wasn't. So we thought, oh well, fair enough, we carry on, we're either going to fall over, twitch to death, or failing that, we're going to be all right. So we were. And later on, because they said, well, no one has fired anything in our direction, we shouldn't be under attack, so we ain't been under attack. But the people doing the NBC testing were absolutely certain that there had been chemicals come over. It was only later established, the fact was, our aircraft had gone over and been attacking his supplies and reserves of chemical weapons, which they'd been very effective at blowing up. Not destroying, blowing up. Prevailing wind was from them to us, so we had got a little bit of a dose of their nerve agents as it come over on the wind. And that was the nearest to nasty I actually came. But we still don't know, actually. None of us ordinary grunts know anything about it, what happened.
For the aircrew, a very different job was required.
You can see a hole in this lane, northern lane.
Flying into enemy territory meant facing anti-aircraft fire.
5-2, come around, that's our leader.
Yeah, see small clusters Chipotle down there as well.
Coming.
There were also threats from surface-to-air missiles.
Okay, come on, line 2 to the SAM launch, 9 o'clock, low. Okay, keep watching it. I'm still coming up in the world.
And then obviously we'd go off and do the flight and come back, and that was a different kettle of fish. That was kind of like a slow build up to it, because you would go out west along the border or south of the border between Iraq and Saudi Arabia, or sometimes we were on a shorter mission. You'd go up to the east of Kuwait and up the Shat al Arab. You wouldn't, because if you were going to somewhere near Basra, you wouldn't need to tank. But if you're going up near Baghdad, yes, you would need to tank. So generally there was a period of transit which may have involved air-to-air refueling, and then eventually you'd cross the border, and that would be the tense time. So you sort of constantly keep an eye out, not so much for Iraqi aircraft, because as I said earlier, they hadn't shown. Occasionally you'd hear AWACS call that something was airborne, but by this time it was Iraqi aircraft trying to make an escape to Iran. So they would head east at low level very fast and try and make a landing in Iran. But so you always had that sort of confidence that AWACS was there keeping an eye on things. We had fighter cover, and then the closer you got to the target, again, if it was in the south of Iraq, it tended to be less, say less well defended. You wouldn't get as much in terms of anti-aircraft fire or surface-to-air missile threat. However, if you went up near Baghdad, it was a lot more active in that regard.
For a while, the role of the Buccaneer was to attack Iraqi major transport infrastructure. On the 8th of February 1991, Flight Lieutenant Keith Nugent and Squadron Leader Tony Lunnon-Wood flew over enemy territory to attack the Al Ramadi Highway Bridge. While television news broadcasts typically show the point of impact, the full story of how strikes occurred is rarely told.
So it was a case of sort of heading to the target, doing what you needed to do in the target area. And we tended to kind of zigzag our way to the target so that the Iraqis wouldn't know exactly where we were heading. But once we'd finished, you just headed south in a straight line as fast as you could to get out of enemy airspace, because there was only one way you were going, and that was out of Iraq.
Filmed from XX-894 and degraded by time, the following footage is only marginally worse quality than what Nugent actually saw in his screen while operating the laser designation pod.
Cougar, Aston.
Yeah, I saw the SAM go up actually.
Okay, mate. We're looking good at the moment.
On this day, Lunnon-Wood and Nugent were flying in the second Buccaneer to attack the target.
And just still happy with your tracking?
Yeah.
Only 6-3, you're marking.
Up when Dickie calls up.
Okay, lasers off for the moment. 20 miles.
There's a few trails around at the moment.
Here, Nugent aims the laser as a reserve for the first aircraft lined up on the eastern end.
Piston link off.
6-3.
The low bleep is the sweep of enemy radar. The bell sound is a signal for Nugent that the enemy's radar fire control, which directs missiles skyward, is interested in the Buccaneer.
Far behind us, he's doing the business there. Good man.
Are they shooting?
I'm coming right, Keith, just so I can see the target.
Okay.
And we're stratospheric at the moment, Tiger, so just hang in there.
Stand by.
2 bars are present on the screen. When the low bar stops flashing, the laser is designating. Of lesser importance is the upper bar, showing the strength of the signal bouncing back.
Okay, I can see the bridge visually now, so wait, Peach. You see our boys out on the left, ready to hack the watch.
Only 6-1 cross turn.
The store's gone call from the first team yet. Okay.
15 miles.
Okay, I've seen Dickie's bombs hit.
Impact, yeah.
All right, now, if you
Okay,
just
going to my end.
go to your end and don't forget to put the laser on. Okay, we're stratospheric at the moment, looking good out the back.
Right, and lasing.
Good on airfield out on the right there, can't see any action from that at the moment.
Okay.
Okay, just holding it there for a minute.
Quality target information was scarce. It is unclear if the bridge contained a gap. Nugent had to rely upon visual confirmation from the pilot to avoid directing the bombs between the highways.
Can you see the bridge popping out the window?
Yeah.
Is that 2 lanes there? It's got one white fence, then a second white fence in the middle, and then no fence on the other side.
Come on, just go for the left-hand side if you're not sure. The smoke's just drifting down when
Okay,
the
I'm happy
bombs
now.
go.
I'm happy now.
Just confirm you're lasing.
I am lasing. I'm happy.
Okay. Come on, boys. I haven't had the stores away call yet. There they go. Right, they're off and running. I go. Big bombs coming. Looks like there's quite a big difference between lead and twos there.
Okay.
I can only see one set of bombs going. Right, that's 10 seconds, Tiger. Looks okay out at the moment.
Happy.
Right, we're still stratospheric, so... Okay, I'm gently going to start coming left now.
Okay, happy. How long done?
All right.
Okay.
21 seconds gone, mate.
Gently, the head's nodding slightly.
Oh, bollocks. Okay, I'm just coming back on the speed.
Okay.
Okay, that's 30 seconds gone.
Holding it.
Good man. Keep going, keep going. Put a AAA down there. Nice snakes at the moment. That's 37 seconds gone. Come on.
15 blank scope.
Got it. One blank scope.
Okay. Next splash. Okay, there's AAA down there. Let's go.
Yeah,
Fuck out of here. Right, power's coming up.
Left onto 205.
AAA's well below us. Just keep checking if you can, Tiger.
I'm doing.
Same picture.
Soon, the aircrew attempt to locate the source of anti-aircraft fire for intelligence gathering.
All exit exit, buddy Spike.
Right, Keith, if you can, when you get some good video on that, if you can swivel out to the left down south of the town, you'll see a blazing refinery.
Okay, stand by. Right, hang on. Right, there's a big hole in the bridge where my bombs went in.
Okay, what about Dickie's end?
Dickie's. Looks like a big hole in his end as well. We haven't dropped the bridge, but there's holes in the roadway. I see the AAA on the screen. Where's the...
Okay, now if you go south of the town, lots of AAA over that POL site now. Lots and lots of it.
Where?
All little white puffs. If you look out the window, Tiger.
Yep.
Can you see it? The little white cotton puff balls.
Only 6361.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No man.
See if you can get that POL site so the boys can have the pictures and see some of the damage they've done.
Okay, looking, I'll go that way.
Sarge, crest on.
Okay, we're still,
Trying to relate what I'm saying.
Confirm on time.
Determined Norwich on time.
Copy.
Still pumping up a lot of AAA at us. But it's just sort of sitting over the town in a barrage.
Cougars, pictures clean.
See if you can get some film of that, Keith, if you...
And then it was kind of, once you cross the border, it's just an absolute feeling of elation that, right, I've survived that. Let's get back to base. And we were on a kind of, if I remember, 2 days on, 1 day off rotation. So once you've done your mission for the day, you'd get a bit of a sort of wind down period, but then come in and plan for the next one. And then if you'd done 2, then you knew you were sort of 24 hours off. And again, you get back to this surreal existence in a 5-star hotel with a swimming pool and food laid on as you would expect normally from a 5-star hotel, and entertainment in the evening.
Working on the fleet while at war threw up its own set of challenges and surprises. Held in affection by many who serviced it, the Buccaneer was notoriously labour-intensive. However, the aircraft proved remarkably resilient in the Gulf. Some ground crew were subjected to intensive and unceasing work schedules, while others, expecting to be facing the furious intensity of war, suddenly found themselves largely unemployed.
I was really good. I actually slept through the only bit of war that we had. There was a Scud attack, in fact I think there was 2 at Bahrain, and the Patriots came off and went off after them. I don't know how good they are, But I know one thing, everyone said it was a hell of a bang when they took out the incoming scuds. All I can say is I slept through it. So my experience of war is there was nothing happening.
The thing is, we got into routine. We sort of went to work in civilian clothes, got changed into uniform, did the shift, came back in civilian clothes, got showering out for something to eat, and then a couple of cans of Heineken, I think that's what we were allowed. And then that was it. Up next morning and same, it's going to continue like that. I think we were there a few weeks and we found an Italian restaurant, and that's where we made a Sunday evening a really nice meal. And that's right, after a while, there was Barry Defence Force guards outside the front of the hotel. And you know the film, was it Arnold Schwarzenegger anyway, Uzi submachine guns? That's what they had. Little tiny sort of stub machine guns. And then there was many on the line to start with, handling the aircraft, and the aircraft away quite a while, so we ended up doing training as well, all the time. And then they're looking for somebody to sort out the extra rates. That means like local overseas allowance you get for being there, paying for your food, because you only got supplied one meal on the base. So I've written it down. I remember what they called me, Paymaster General. And in the bag, I found a receipt for me signing for the money, and it said nearly 15,000 dinar. I'd look it up. That equates to £30,000. And there's a joke. Some people were saying that I was seen heading for Gulf Air, civilian airline, with the money. No. But everybody got the same amount, I think. If I remember right, it was 120 dinar. But I thought I had to sort it out into piles. I thought, I'm going to keep them together, so I ended up stapling them. So everybody got the staples and the money. So come a Sunday, I was the most popular person, because they all came to me for the money. It was everybody, the air crew, ground crew, support staff and all that. But then on night shift I handed it over to somebody else. But one time, oh God, that's right. One time the air raid went and I had all this money in front of me. I thought, oh, what am I going to do? I can't leave it lying. So I put it back in the bag I had, and then put on my gear into the shelter. The shelter's only about that sort of high. I had to crawl into it. And then minutes later the all clear went. It was for the Scud missiles that came over. But most of them landed.
We're expecting Buccaneers under normal circumstances had a terrible high use of fatigue life, which meant to say our jobs were very, very busy all the while. So we expected to go out there, have the Buccaneer do its bit, and us to be run ragged doing our job. What happened was the Buccaneers went out there, and for some unknown reason the pilots were flying them with as delicacy you've ever known. Net result was fatigue was a minor, well, it wasn't a problem with the aircraft. They actually didn't need any of the fatigue NDT requirements, the whole detachment. It was weird. So net result was we were sort of surplus to requirements, really. We were there just in case. What we did was we became, well, I became, for instance, a taxi driver. They needed people to run people to and from the accommodation. As I had a military license, I was able to get a Bahraini military license, which allowed me to drive anywhere on Bahrain with these vehicles that we had. And so actually I became a local taxi driver, really.
So we were working 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts. Yeah. But you weren't working 12 hours because the aircraft were gone. In fact, we used to come in the bus or the coach, and the first wave was taxiing. So we get changed in uniform and then see if there's anything to do, and probably 9 times out of 10 there wasn't.
So you kept yourself busy. We had the faults from the days, so you rectify those. And then and this was in the days when we had electricians and avionics as opposed to what we've got now. The electrician's main role then was to make sure that the aircraft was in a fit state to be able to drop munitions. So we would basically simulate by setting up the cockpit switches, going out onto the pylon with a test lamp, pressing the trigger, making sure you got a light, meant that that system was serviceable. So that sort of brought it home a little bit. The next time this trigger is going to be pressed is actually going to be somebody dropping a bomb, and that's when you saw the Pave Spike videos.
And the night shift were going home, going back to the accommodation, and then you had to try and, I suppose, keep busy somehow. But there was things. But as a car's aircraft worker on aircraft, didn't seem to be that much really. Then the next 8 aircraft were ready to go, so they prepared for the next 4 to go. The 4 spare to the 4 that landed, they got turned around to be spared as well.
As far as the electricians go, any electrical fault, now the electricians really have got a hand in everything. So you've got the sooties, the propulsion guys that look after the engines, but as far as any electrical distribution is down to the leckies to look at. So any problems with any of that side of it, you've got the weapons side of it, cockpit lighting, power supplies to every single bit on the board. You get the fairies and the avionics guys that will say they were adept at fault finding. Well, they weren't as good as the leckies. They were all sheep bones and uckers boards. What box should we change now?
A lot of the faults they had, if anything, they had more men on the night shift, and they rectified them, I would say. Because the only ones I remember doing on the day shift was like a wheel change. We're getting involved with a wheel change once. So I said the 4 aircraft would come back down, and there was already 8 fully serviceable on the ground already.
There was a VC-10 required to do a work on it in Riyadh. And when we went across to Riyadh, myself and one other, to do this NDT on the VC-10, that was different. They were receiving a lot of, as they called it, inbound, and but of course at that time everyone was in even more fancy hotels. Actually, I was in a very classy hotel at that job, and we just had to do, just stood around, did the job, come back. It was a bit more sensible, though. It certainly reminded me that we were at war, because whilst we were doing the job, which was actually on the Conway engines on the VC-10, we were sat in the air intakes of the engines, which is fairly high off the deck. You could look across the pan, and there was a Kazavak Herc ready to take people back to the UK, and I must admit that brought it home a little bit. The army blokes going back Kazavak with the aircraft, with the limping or being carried on stretcher, or really being carried in serious, I don't know what you would call them, but very bad stretchers with all manner of blooming pipes and things going to them. That brought it home a bit. They really did have it serious. And for us, it was, 90% boredom, and the rest I slept through.
And what I tried to do was try and bury myself in the work I was doing and try not to think about You know, because if you spend your time thinking about what's going on outside, it destroys you. You know, tornado crews, yes, I understand that, you know, they were losing their mates and people, and I fully get that. And the ground crew as well. You know, there's nothing worse, and we witnessed it on 208 a couple of times when you lose air crew, and it's a horrible feeling. You know, the air crew had a professional job to do, and in some respects went into their bubble, I suppose, which, you know, and you let them get on with it. You know, when they walk to the aircraft, normally on back home it would be chat, how you doing, sir, what you doing, sir, this, that and the other. You know, let them get on with it, and if they wanted to speak to you, they had a job. And you see in some of the Buccaneer footage to the "Here I Go Again" and "In the Air Tonight" type videos, you can see the look of the aircrew's face, and you know they're going out there not knowing whether they're coming back.
And I can still see the pictures in my head to this day of a gloriously sunny day over Iraq, and plumes of smoke from missiles coming up at us. It wasn't like hundreds of them, but you know, 2 or 3 sort of missile launches, you'd see these things coming up, and I suppose it comes back to that slightly surreal environment. But you're so well trained that you get on with the job in hand that you've got to do, and you certainly as a 2-man crew, the pilot Tony Lunham and I just worked together to do the things that we needed to do. So if there was, if there were missiles, because these things would come up on my radar warning receiver to alert you that a radar was looking at you, then I would put the electronic countermeasures pod on. So if it comes up as a SAM2 on your radar warning receiver, then put the SAM2 countermeasures on, and keep weaving. It's like that old adage from the Battle of Britain: you don't stay in a straight line for more than 10 seconds. And it wasn't because of a fighter threat; it was because of the missile threat.
Yeah, the worst thing you can do is to be sat there at 2:00 in the morning, and then you start to think, so. You know, you've got people out there, we've all been in the world. I mean, I remember one night, there was videos sent out, entertainment packages, and it was Ghost, the film with Patrick Swayze, which is a bit of a love story. Maybe it wouldn't have been the best one to show a lot of sort of blokes. You all right? Yeah, no, I've got a bit of sand in my eye. But no, we were sort of sheltered from what was going on back home, and probably rightly so.
That was funny. The sleeping side of things, because sometimes we would we'd be up for a dawn takeoff, so your transport would be leaving the hotel at sort of 2-3 o'clock in the morning, so you'd need to try and get to bed early, and then get up to leave the hotel early. So we did have, I think it was temazepam, and we did use that to try and get some sleep. It really didn't help me at all, because you're quite keyed up with, you're flying a mission the next day. So I found it difficult to sleep sometimes, and even taking the temazepam to try and help you sleep, or at least get a few hours sleep. It was difficult to do that. I tended to get some sleep when I came back, and you get a few hours to wind down.
Technical failures happened too. On the 8th of February, the Al-Basra Highway Bridge was attacked, but with terrible consequences.
Come on, baby, hit. Should be about now. Come on, baby. Shit. Well shot. Oh, Christ. Okay, they're well right. They're to the right of all the buildings. Miss. Okay, I know where the bombs went. Let's run for it. Oh, shit. Right in all the buildings.
Yeah, I have. In fact, there's not that much buildings there.
Shit. Through, brother.
Miles out. Right, I've lost staff. He's coming under 133.
The cause was assessed to be the tornado failing to align correctly to the target. Despite the misses, successes scored by the Buccaneer were considerable. On the same day, Baston and Tate, flying an XX-899, served as the second of the Buccaneer pair to attack the As-Samoa suspension bridge, the second such attack on the target. This time, instead of aiming for the abutment like in the first assault, the towers are targeted, with spectacular results.
Just above the first bridge.
If you're happy, mate, I've got something early.
Okay, pulling off. The first bridge is just before the built-up area of the town.
05, this is Cougar, go ahead.
Second bridge is not quite coming in just yet.
Okay, I'm going to see what the target area is.
Say again, mate.
I've got where the target area is.
Okay, I can see all three bridges now.
1, 2, 3, it's that one.
Okay, and confirm the northern clear.
I'm striking the southern one at the moment till DC's impact.
Good, man.
In case something goes at the last minute.
That's good, splash. Splash.
I'm all happy for us.
You still happy?
Still by a minute, yeah.
Okay. 6 is happy. Great.
Just got a lot of debris around there.
Yeah. I'm just keeping the throttles forward and we might be able to get around to the northern side.
I'm not lasering at the moment.
Good, man.
Cougar, picture's clean.
Still visual the tornadoes.
Roger, I've still not got the target yet.
Okay, here's the picture too. We've got 25 grand of heights. I'm trying to get us ahead. The smoke is drifting down. Store away. Clock's running.
Okay, I'm not lasering at the moment, Beaks.
Okay, mate. We're almost coming up a beam. It should be able to see something shortly. 15 gone. 15
Lasering
gone.
and happy.
Good, man. 15 gone. Smoke has drifted all downwind. 25 seconds gone. Still visual tornadoes. 30 seconds. 35.
They're gone.
Okay, I've got 2 wild ones as well.
That was a late starter we call.
Yep, I saw 2 wild bombs as well. The
And
bridge is completely gone. If you can laze up the road
laser
towards DC's.
Oh shit, I've hit the bow sight. Fuck.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I saw where the wild ones went. Smash.
I'll hit the fucking bow sight, what a cunt.
Okay. I've plotted the wild ones, it's okay. The bridge is completely gone.
I just want to give us another sight on if you can.
No, I can't make my way past it. Okay.
Yeah. You keep going on. Oh, I fucking hit the bow sight by mistake.
If you go 9 vis.
Yep.
9 vis?
9 vis now.
It should be somewhere down there now. Should be just coming up towards the river.
Yep.
Cougar, picture's clean.
About 15 going over the top.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it. Centre of the bridge, she is gone.
Yep.
Oh no, the bridge is gone. And the pontoon bridge to the north. I was looking at different things. You just go for the tornadoes, happy with that?
Yep, got tornadoes.
What's the fuel at the moment?
12.8.
Once you dodge, I'll switch the Bombay off at the moment. In case we get slightly over pressure. That other bridge is intact, it looks like.
Okay. Got green flag, yellow.
VTR's off.
Thanks.
Having said that, there was a problem. Part of the reason for going out was a little bit of a loss of morale. We heard, once again, I don't know, whether we heard because the tornadoes were being shot down, and 19 squadrons, the ones that were based in Bahrain, had taken more hits than most, so perhaps they were the ones that most needed bolstering. So they came out, and we came out to support them. And if anyone sees the t-shirts that we had at the time, they are very sort of tongue-in-cheek at the poor old tornado, feeling nervous, and we were going to come out and help them and be nice to them. And there's a Buccaneer with his wing around a tornado saying, "It's all right, we're here now."
A connection with home was also vitally important. Service personnel were faced with the tricky problem of how to communicate with family at home.
Blueies, you know, the blue letters, they are a sort of lifeline. I also found a sort of mini tape recorder, and I used to send a weekly message to the wife and my son and daughter, and they sent another one back to me. So that helped. That's right, in amongst the photo album, you can see the brick. It's like the way back mobile phone. Me and Paul were in the office, and he decided to pick up the brick, that's what we called it, and he'd see if Christie's, the flower shop, would ring them and answer, and they did answer. So we both arranged to get wives Valentine's Day flowers.
Yeah, so certainly from the Blueies that I wrote, didn't put anything about what we were doing. It just didn't seem right, and didn't seem right to burden people back home. Remember one phone call, I was on the phone to my mum and the air raid siren went off and I had to hang up, and it took a while to be able to get back and, you know, everything was going on, and phone again, so that she must have been sat there worrying. But no, you've got to remember the Bluey is basically an A4 piece of paper, and there's far more important things you want to know about than what's going on in the news. You know, you just want to make sure everyone's okay and surviving as they were. You know, it wasn't a case of they were in any danger, and they were really looked after well. I mean, RAF Lossiemouth, as other camps did a lot for families, you know, to make sure that they were kept informed of what was going on. Because sometimes the stuff you see on the news isn't what's actually happening. You know, exactly.
Surprised me.
Yeah, I know.
And one day, if that's right, one day my wife phoned me at 4:30 in the morning, which is like 1:30 back here, to ask if I was all right. But there's liaison officers and people visiting the families, and they went to meetings and stuff. So that was a good thing. Of course, I didn't know this was going on.
There was a lot of support, which was really well received from people back home. People back home we didn't even know. You know, you'd go in there and there'd be just like a load of parcels, you know, just to any serving person in the forces. And that was good because it made you feel that you were actually being remembered, I suppose.
We were there the whole time into March, when there was a ceasefire. And we got told, oh, the Buccaneers come out last, we'll go back, we'll stay longer. But it didn't. We ended up one of the first lots going back. It's surprising. So we came back, I've written down here, 12th of March, and we got airborne and they gave us champagne. I thought we were heroes or something. And when we landed at Cyprus and we got told, we took off from Bahrain at 1 o'clock in the morning, got to Cyprus and we stayed there for 3 hours. We kept thinking, what's the hold up? Why are we still not gone yet? It was all to time it back to landed at Lossiemouth with the press. We're there. I remember the door opening for the steps to come in. I could see my wife standing there, she was waiting.
So yeah, we were all excited and we thought we were doing a good job. And then we came home. We came home. I mean, the early party came home, but there was no real parade as such. We came home probably late evening, so it was pitch black. A small contingent of people met us, including Group Captain Ford, who was a station commander. And you came in, you had a little bit of a get-together with the family. They bussed the families in. You had a quick glass of champagne, you were on the bus, and then you were back to your quarter. And there was just nothing the Buccaneer really didn't get the mention. Now, I don't know how much was in the news. I'd imagine the local news it did. But when we came back, there was obviously a Freedom of Elgin parade. There was a parade in London, which was everybody. But I think, if my memory serves me correct, the Buccaneer was meant to be on the fly past for the London parade, but due to issues, it didn't make it.
I think it was about 2 weeks after the war finished that we went home. It's mid-March. So it was fantastic homecoming. Very excited to get home and see my friends and family and my girlfriend in particular. They made the trip up to Lossiemouth, and it was sort of quite an emotional day. I just remember that we'd come back from 35-degree heat in Bahrain to a typically wet March day in Lossiemouth, but the weather didn't matter at all. And then there was a little bit of a drinks reception, and my mum had travelled all the way up to Lossiemouth as well to see us home. And then we took a couple of weeks leave afterwards.
Yeah, it's an experience and it shapes you as a person. Would I want to go through it again? Probably not. But as a serving member, I was always, that was always part of the job. Before I joined up, probably naively, I sort of seen the Falklands, but I never expected to get involved in a conflict. And I think a lot of people did. It was a career that you chosen. You might get to see some nice deployments, but certainly getting involved in a conflict was pretty slim. So it came as a bit of a shock, when we actually got the VC-10 back and were told we were going, I suppose. And I think that's probably the same for a lot of people. A lot of people didn't actually expect to get involved in a conflict again.
If you can imagine it, when you're faced with the war, it was almost that sharp day after day every time you went on that airfield. It was a weird thing. It is a very weird feeling. I think with the army, that's the big game that they have. That's why you have PTSD, because you're up in that sort of position just prior to the crash. You're in that mode, except you're in there for days and days and weeks and weeks. And I think that's really where they suffer. We have this funny switch on, switch off job where, you went and you were on back at the hotel and you just went about your normal day. You were wearing normal civvy clothes. You went down the road for a McDonald's to eat. You could even, as Bahrain was wet, you could even have alcohol. So, it was weird.
Yes, longer term, I suppose one of the things I remember is that it was a long time before I could ever watch a war film again. Maybe it might have been sort of 6 months, a year or more. I never felt that I'd suffered from PTSD as such. But the only thing I can think of, even to this day, is if you ask me to go and do what you call paintballing or laser quest or something like that, I'm just not interested. And I don't know that I would have ever been interested in it before, but putting yourself in a situation where, even if it's just a game where you can be shot, it just doesn't appeal to me.
I wouldn't be one of those people that meet in a pub and say, "Oh, I was in the war," and not one of those. If someone wants to ask me about it, I'll talk about it, and I'll openly talk about the fact that at times I was scared. At times you were worried. You didn't know where. No one had been to war. Were we coming back? Were we not? Were we going to lose friends? And that's all part of being human. There's no point in putting on this, I'm Superman, nothing bothers me, because that's when you bottle it up and that's when you become ill. So, yes, I was in the Gulf War. I don't believe it had any effect. I'm proud of the fact that I was there. But I'd be more likely to tell you I was on Buccaneers probably before I'd tell you that I was in the Gulf, because the Gulf was just a part of the work, whereas the Buccaneers was a huge chunk of my life. I was on there from 1985 to 1993. So that was a part of my life that I'm extremely proud of, and the Gulf was just an extra part of that.
On the 27th of February, 2 Buccaneers attacked the Sheikh Mazar airfield, achieving arguably the crowning glory of the Royal Air Force in the Gulf War. After bombing the airfield, 2 aircraft were spotted preparing to take off. XX-901 aimed its laser designator onto a Kuwait Air Force Hercules, taken by the Iraqi Air Force during the occupation.
We'll start going back now. Start going back. I've started, mate. Okay, I've still got the plane. And the running on one end as flag. It's 2 planes. Okay, they've gone in. 6 splash. Okay, I'm good. Hang on. Like a visual here. It's 2 planes. 3's rolling in, heading 210. Contact gone. Aircraft on the pen, boss. Yep. I'm still tracking it, 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 still tracking it. Happy. Bomb's gone. I'm happy. You get this, Norman. I buy you bourbon and coke tonight. Negative. Well, 4's got a 3, nose 15. Oh, it's missed. Oh, more plane there. UHP.
Though bombs failed to detonate, the aircraft was irrevocably damaged and was eventually broken up for scrap. Then, after bombing the runway, Bill Cope and Carl Wilson, flying XX-894, the same aircraft Nugent had navigated, attacked an Iraqi Airways Antonov on the taxiway.
You hit the runway? Yep, that's what I went for. Okay, DMPI was open. Okay, right. And the runway on one end and flag. 6 flash. Roger, visual here. 3's rolling in, heading 210. Contact gone. Aircraft on the pen, boss. Yep. Alright, just tell you what you're going to point out as you go down. He's got a fucking big arrow, but he's going for that one. I'll go for the next one to the left. Business got him going down. Just taxiing into the pan. Right? Remember, they've got the airplanes. No much taxiing onto the pan. Happy with that. Bomber station. Come on, come round, you bugger. Negative. Come round, come round. Okay, sights on. Stand by. Happy? Happy. Losing. 3059. Losing. Still got it. Bit of a head now. Still got it. Still got it. Still got it. bastard.
The resultant explosion made it the only Royal Air Force aircraft to score a successful hit on an enemy aircraft during the whole conflict. During early morning planning the following day, news arrived that a ceasefire had been issued, ending the war. XX-894 now resides at Cotswold Airport, where a dedicated team of volunteers maintain the aircraft and provide live demonstrations, keeping the history of this aircraft alive. During the conflict, 12 Buccaneer jets flew a combined 216 operational sorties, destroying or seriously damaging 24 bridges, 15 airfields and 2 aircraft. None were lost to enemy action. In March 1994, the aircraft was scrapped.